On August 9, 1980, Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, both 19, vanished after attending a wedding reception at Concord House in Concord, Wisconsin. In the days that followed, searchers discovered various clues scattered throughout the town, including Tim's car with his wallet, a pair of pants, ropes, and a pair of women's underwear. These clues eventually led to a horrifying discovery. 2 months later, the bodies of Tim and Kelly were found brutally violated and abandoned in a field. It took nearly 3 decades, but advancements in DNA technology, along with an unexpected witness and a determined investigator, finally revealed the identity of the perpetrator, a seemingly unassuming man whose dark secrets were unknown even to his neighbors. But who was this man? And why did it take so long to uncover the truth? Today's narrative takes us back to Concord, Wisconsin, a small town in Jefferson County with a population of just over 2,000. Known for its tranquil parks and natural beauty, Concord is a haven for outdoor enthusiasts who enjoy activities like hiking, biking, fishing, and camping. With a violent crime rate of only 7%, significantly lower than the national average of 22.7%, Concord was a place where people felt safe, rarely locking their doors and looking out for one another. It was precisely the kind of community where Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, young high school sweethearts, envisioned a future together, getting married, settling on a farm, raising their children, and growing old side by side. In 1980, Tim and Kelly, both 19, were deeply in love and engaged to be married. Despite living in different towns within Jefferson County, Tim in Hebron and Kelly in Fort Atkinson, their paths crossed while attending Fort Atkinson High School. Kelly, a young woman known for her beauty and kindness, had a deep passion for cosmetology. On the other hand, Tim, a hard-working farm boy, possessed strength and determination. Both individuals were adored by their loved ones for their compassionate nature. As a couple, Tim and Kelly served as role models for other young people. After graduating from high school, Tim pursued a career in farming, with his loyal companion being a tractor affectionately named the Lonesome Loser. Meanwhile, Kelly attended beauty school and recently completed her studies in 1980, aspiring to become a skilled hairstylist and beautician. On August 9, 1980, Tim and Kelly attended a wedding reception at Concord House, Wisconsin. Following the celebration, they had plans to meet friends and enjoy a carnival. However, they failed to appear. The last sighting of them alive was around 11:00 p.m. on August 9, 1980, when they departed from the reception. Concerned by their absence and lack of communication, by the morning of August 10, 1980, Tim's father, David Hack, reported them as missing. On the same day, David discovered Tim's brown Oldsmobile parked at Concord House, containing Tim's wallet with $67, his jacket, and his checkbook, all locked inside. The case took a significant turn on August 15th, when searchers discovered Kelly's pants and underwear by the roadside, approximately 3 miles away from Concord House. These garments were found to have male bodily fluids on them. Additionally, ropes with military-style knots were found nearby, suggesting the involvement of an individual with military experience. This discovery drastically altered the nature of the investigation. It was no longer a matter of locating a couple who may have chosen to embark on a romantic escapade. Instead, the focus shifted to finding them alive, as they were believed to be in imminent danger. Approximately 2 months later, squirrel hunters from Milwaukee stumbled upon the badly decomposed remains of Kelly Drew in a wood area approximately 7 miles from Concord House. Around 100 yards away, a fully clothed male body was discovered and later identified as Tim Hack. This marked the official declaration of the case as a homicide, earning it the name Sweetheart Murders. The exact cause of death was not immediately evident, as no murder weapon was found at the scene. However, upon further examination, the medical examiner discovered stab wounds on Tim's body and ligature marks on Kelly, indicating that they were both victims of stabbing and strangulation. Kelly had ligature marks on her ankles and wrists, suggesting she had been bound. The presence of ligature marks and insect activity around her throat area indicated that she was most likely strangled. Additionally, bodily fluids found on Kelly's clothes pointed towards a sexual assault. The Sweeve-Up murders captivated the nation due to its sensational nature. 2 young lovers brutally murdered, with the killer or killers still unidentified. The investigation began by interviewing acquaintances of the couple, searching for anyone who may have harbored enough hatred to commit such a heinous act. The police also questioned individuals present at the wedding reception, including the staff at the Concord House where the event took place. Among those interviewed was Edward Wayne Edwards, a handyman employed at the Concord House. Edward, who resided in a nearby campground close to Interstate 94, claimed to have had no contact with the couple and insisted he was not present at the Concord House when they went missing. He stated that he was deer hunting in the nearby woods during that time. However, the police became suspicious when they noticed that Edward had a broken nose. When questioned about it, he attributed the injury to his deer hunting trip. This raised concerns among investigators as deer hunting season in Wisconsin typically occurs in November, not August. Following the police interrogation, Edward relocated his wife and 5 children away from Wisconsin in September 1980. In the midst of the investigation, the investigators relied heavily on eyewitness accounts of a van with a grimy appearance that had been parked alongside Tim's car at the Concord House parking lot. Witnesses reported that the van abruptly departed under suspicious circumstances around the time Tim and Kelly were last seen. Edward happened to own a van that matched the description and was known to possess a .357 revolver. However, lacking a license plate number or substantial evidence linking him to the crime scene, the police were severely limited in their ability to pursue this lead. Consequently, all other leads in the case dried up, resulting in the shelving of the case and its subsequent stagnation. 2 decades after the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, Richard Lewell, an investigator from the Wisconsin Department of Justice who had been involved in the original investigation, requested the reopening of the case. Lewell had been unable to let go of the case for nearly 30 years, and as retirement loomed, he was determined to exhaust all efforts in solving it. In an interview, he expressed his confidence in pursuing the case due to the significant advancements in DNA technology and scientific methods over the past couple of decades. This newfound confidence propelled him to approach the case with renewed vigor. Lewell had a strong intuition that the police had already interviewed the killer during the initial stages of the investigation, and that the person's name would be documented in the files. He simply needed to uncover it. After meticulously sifting through files, witness statements, and interview recordings for 2 months, one name caught Lewell's attention: Edward Wayne Edwards. Not only did Edward possess the means and opportunity to commit the crimes, but the fact that he relocated his entire family out of Wisconsin shortly after being interviewed by the police raised significant suspicions. Encouraged by this discovery, Lewell, along with a team of cold case investigators, resolved to pursue their hunch that Edward was the potential killer. When Edward's neighbors in Concord, Wisconsin were interviewed, it was revealed that he was a challenging person to live with. Described as short-tempered and volatile, he often resorted to violence towards his wife and children. One neighbor even went as far as to call him a monster. Edward's son, John Edwards, characterized him as troubled, mentioning his inability to control his emotions and the presence of underlying rage. In 2009, April Blasio, Edward's daughter, reached out to authorities with crucial information regarding the cold case murder of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew. She believed that her father, Edward Wayne Edwards, was involved in the crime due to his extensive criminal background. April, who had always been intrigued by her father's mysterious life, felt compelled to share what she knew. Edward Wayne Edwards, born in Akron, Ohio in 1933, faced a tumultuous childhood after losing his parents and being placed in an orphanage. His experiences there, marked by abuse, contributed to his rebellious nature as a teenager. With a history of minor offenses, Edwards' criminal record began at a young age, leading to his enlistment in the U.S. Marines at 18. However, his time in the military was short-lived, resulting in a dishonorable discharge after disappearing shortly after enlistment. Edward was unwilling to abandon his life of crime, which ultimately led to his recurring imprisonment. By the age of 22 in 1955, he managed to escape from jail in Akron and embarked on a spree of robbing gas stations across various states. Throughout his 20s and 30s, Edward lived as a fugitive, drifting from place to place and taking up odd jobs such as working as a ship docker, vacuum cleaner retailer, and handyman. His autobiography clearly reflects his enjoyment of the notoriety he gained during this period. Edward proudly admitted to never using an alias or disguising his identity while committing crimes, as he craved fame. However, his criminal activities caught up with him once again in 1960, resulting in imprisonment for attempting to impersonate a federal officer. Despite being held in the Portland, Oregon jail, Edward managed to escape, prompting the FBI to include him on their 10 most wanted list in 1961. Authorities eventually apprehended him in 1962 and incarcerated him at the United States Penitentiary Leavenworth. However, due to his good behavior, Edward was granted parole in 1967. He credited a compassionate guard at Leavenworth for his personal growth in his memoir. Following his release, Edward married and pursued a career as a motivational speaker. In 1972, at the age of 39, he made appearances on television shows such as To Tell the Truth and What's My Line. That same year, he published his autobiography, The Metamorphosis of a Criminal, the true life story of Ed Edwards. It seemed as though Edwards' fortunes were finally turning in his favor. He had outsmarted the system and was on the path to success. Unfortunately, his streak of good luck was short-lived. In 1977, Edward committed his first murder, targeting 21-year-old Billy Lavaco and his girlfriend, 18-year-old Judith Straub, both residents of Sterling, Ohio. The couple went on a date on August 7, 1977, but never returned. Later that day, Judith's car was discovered in the parking lot of Silver Creek Metro Park, with her shoes and purse left behind. On August 8th, the day following the incident, Norton police, along with the assistance of family members and a National Guard helicopter, initiated a search for Billy and Judith. The search party eventually discovered their lifeless bodies concealed within the dense vegetation near the Metro Park. It was evident that they had been ruthlessly shot at close range with a 20-gauge shotgun. At that time, investigators were unable to establish a connection between Billy and Judith's case and Edward, allowing him to evade justice for the murders. These killings, however, established a pattern that would persist with the subsequent murders of Tim and Kelly. Meanwhile, by 1982, at the age of 49, Edward found himself incarcerated once again in Pennsylvania, this time for arson. Nevertheless, he took pride in his criminal achievements. In 1993, Edward penned a letter to the FBI, requesting his criminal and historical records from various cities across 19 states. Supposedly, these records were intended for a new book he was writing, delving into the lives of criminals he had encountered during his time in prison, including individuals like Tony Provenzano, Charles Manson, and Jimmy Hoffa. In 1996, at the age of 63, Edward committed his third murder. This time, his victim was his foster son, 25-year-old Danny Boy Edwards, who had resided with him in Burton, Ohio, for a span of 7 years. Prior to his tragic demise, Danny Boy had served as a soldier in the U.S. Army. Edward somehow managed to persuade him to desert the army and return home. Once Danny Boy arrived, Edward deceitfully lured him into the nearby woods, where he callously ended his life with 2 gunshots to the face. Edward then callously left Danny Boy's body in a shallow grave, which was eventually discovered by a hunter who promptly alerted the authorities. Similar to his initial set of murders, Edward managed to evade justice for the killing of Danny Boy for a couple of years. Individuals close to Edward, such as his son John and daughter April, described him as a deeply troubled individual. His abusive behavior towards his wife and children was extreme, leading his children to flee from home as soon as they could to escape his torment. Investigators strongly believed that Edward perfectly fit the profile of a stereotypical serial killer. His extensive criminal history, coupled with his physical violence towards family members, and the fact that he wrote a book detailing his crimes, all pointed towards his narcissistic nature. Edward's military background provided him with the knowledge to tie the knots on the ropes that were believed to have been used to strangle Kelly. His history of arson further reinforced the perception of him being extremely controlling. Despite his elderly appearance and reliance on an oxygen tank and wheelchair due to his weight, his neighbors in Louisville, Kentucky, were unaware of the evil mind that lurked within him. However, with new evidence and April's statements, investigators had a stronger basis to suspect Edward's involvement in the murders. Upon visiting his home in Louisville, Edward initially denied any knowledge of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew's murders, but under further questioning, he admitted to being at the Concord house on the night of the murders and seeing the couple. He also confessed that he had not been deer hunting that night, contrary to his earlier claims. Edward agreed to a saliva swab for DNA testing, confident that it would not reveal anything incriminating. However, the DNA test results matched the DNA found on Kelly's pants. In 2009, Edward was living in a trailer park in Louisville, where he was well liked by his neighbors who were unaware of his dark past. It wasn't until he was brought to Wisconsin and charged with the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew that his true nature was revealed. During the interview, Edward was presented with the DNA test results, further implicating him in the crimes. Investigators requested an explanation from him regarding the presence of his bodily fluids on Kelly's clothes. Edward began to stutter, fabricating a tale about an intimate encounter with Kelly on the evening of August 9, 1980, claiming it was consensual. He fidgeted in his seat, gesturing wildly. Sensing the investigator's skepticism, he let out a sigh and muttered something quietly. Upon reviewing the interview recording numerous times, investigators recalled the moment when Edward muttered, "Damn it, I killed her." This admission sealed his fate. Edward opted to plead guilty to the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew. In April 2010, Edward Wayne Edwards was found guilty of the 1980 Sweetheart murders and received 2 concurrent life sentences. Despite his request for execution, Wisconsin did not have the death penalty. Retired homicide detective Phil Waters noted that Edward had a history of incarceration and understood the harsh reality of prison life. Unwilling to spend his days behind bars, Edward penned a letter to the Ohio prosecutor's office, hoping to persuade them to seek the death penalty by stating, "You're going to want to put a needle in my arm." In 2010, Edward confessed to the killings of Billy Lavaco and Judith Straub in 1977, but due to the absence of the death penalty at the time, he received life sentences for each. However, he still had one final revelation. During a jailhouse interview in 2011, Edward admitted to murdering his foster son, Danny Boy Edwards, for the life insurance money. This time, his scheme succeeded, and he was sentenced to death on March 8, 2011, for Danny Boy Edwards' murder. Despite being convicted of 5 homicides, investigators suspected that Edward may have had between 9 to 15 additional unidentified victims. In the book, the Peyton Allen files, Phil Stamford suggested that Edward might have been responsible for the murders of Beverly Allen and Larry Peyton in Portland, Oregon in 1960. Detective Chad Garcia from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, one of the investigators in the Sweetheart murders, also suggested that Edward might have been responsible for 15 other murders, including the Zodiac killings. Retired homicide detective John Cameron shared the belief that Edward was behind the Zodiac killings and other high-profile unsolved cases, although these claims remain unproven. Edward Edwards passed away on April 7, 2011, at the Corrections Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, at the age of 77 due to natural causes. His death marked the end of a vicious crime spree that left 5 dead and many grieving. Edward avoided execution by lethal injection, which had been scheduled for August 31, 2011. Despite Edward's arrest for the murders of Tim and Kelly, their family members did not find closure. Norma Walker, Kelly's mother, expressed how Edward's arrest brought back painful memories instead of providing closure. Tim's father, David, felt relief that it was finally over and was grateful for the DNA technology that confirmed Edward as the killer. Edward's daughter, April Blasio, who helped solve the cold case, now dedicates her time to assisting other families of victims with unsolved cases through her podcast, The Clearing. Tim Hack and Kelly Drew had promising futures ahead of them, but their lives were tragically cut short by their killer, Edward Wayne Edwards. Edward, the serial killer, had no personal vendetta against the couple. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, adding to the tragedy of their story. Following Edward Wayne Edwards' arrest and the conclusion of the cases, the loved ones of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, along with the other victims, still struggled to come to terms with the aftermath of the tragedies. Even though Edward's conviction provided some closure, the wounds inflicted by his deeds remained profound.